Hello everybody, welcome to Fallout Lords and Theories, and today we're going to be dealing with a very stupid theory, basically insinuating that the father from Fallout 3 and father from Fallout 4 are the same person. So we're basically going to be reading the Reddit thread, and I'm going to try to be dismissing the points as we go along. So the first one here is, the first point they make is that the father in Fallout 3, James, is 51 years old according to the wiki, which is correct. And then Fallout 4 takes exactly 10 years after Fallout 3. So he's trying to state that Sean, aka father, is 60 and the ages match exactly. The first point I want to make here is that out of everything he lists, that's probably the most concrete piece of evidence he has. And yeah, so that should say a lot for the theory going for a little bit further. So the next one he says is obviously because that ages match up, it couldn't be the same person. That makes no sense. Yeah, but there is somebody that connects both characters. That's Madison Lee. Ironically, he puts this as a point to further the argument, but instead it actually dismisses it. Madison Lee can be found inside the Institute and inside the remnants of the Pentagon, aka the Citadel in Fallout 3. The problem with this is that Madison Lee is a very blunt person, and if Sean was to be the same as James, she wouldn't sugarcoat it. She would clearly call James James. She wouldn't take the time out to call him father or Sean, as she actually goes out of her way to call him father in Fallout 4. As well as it doesn't make much sense because Madison Lee worked vividly with James, so to claim that they're the same person and she knew about it is kind of stupid and far-fetched, because Madison Lee also holds somewhat of a grudge towards Father, but somehow contains a lot of loyalty for him, for James in Fallout 3. To claim that they're the same person would mean that she would have to act roughly, have the same attitude, and overall the same respect for both characters, but she doesn't. In one case, she really respects James as a human being for trying to help the Wasteland, while Sean from Fallout 4 is the complete opposite. So to claim that they're the same person and Madison Lee knows about it is kind of a really stupid point. Next point that he makes is Dr. Lee is born with the people you help in the Capital Wasteland of Fallout 3. In Fallout 4, we find out she left it all behind to work at the Institute. And he claims that she's apparently a very important character in both games. I don't see what the point of that is, as it has really nothing to do with the argument at hand, but I'm going to assume what he's trying to say is that Dr. Lee helped with Project Purity, therefore the loyalty towards James, she kind of trekked all the way to the Commonwealth. But if you actually play Fallout 3, you find that's actually untrue. She's actually leaving the Wasteland not to help James, because at this point James is already KIA. Instead, she's leaving because the Brotherhood wants her to work on Liberty Prime as a weapon, and she is totally not okay with that. So she, instead of helping them, she leaves. And this can be further proven because in Fallout 4, in the Brotherhood of Steel questline, you actually have to recruit Madison Lee to work on Liberty Prime, and depending on what you say to her, she'll actually despise you for it, as if she's already had a grudge towards Liberty Prime, the project in the first place. So the point is kind of hard to make out what exactly this person was trying to insinuate. Was I'm assuming it's because Madison Lee had so much loyalty to James that she tracked went all across the wasteland to help with the Institute, but there's really no incentive. She actually leaves because of Project Liberty Prime, and she wants to go to the Commonwealth in order to help people. So that really doesn't make any sense. So let's read the next one. Sean and James' dad. Um, I know what you were thinking, and they spelled different names, but when they abducted him, they could have easily changed his name. This is once again a very stupid theory because if you actually play Fallout 4, Sean is abducted as a baby. So I don't quite understand the point they're trying to make here. Are they trying to insinuate that he was captured first and then his name was changed from Sean to James? Because that wouldn't make any sense, because if you actually talk to Father on top of the MIT building, he actually says to you that he's never left the Institute until that point. In fact, that he actually makes a point of it, saying that he's never been outside the Institute, and he goes on to insult the Wasteland, to which your character can either defend it or agree with him. So to state that he was kidnapped by the Institute and then somewhat escaped for 20 years, went to Vault 111, or 101, which is impossible within itself because the timelines just don't match up, because he would have had to be in that vault for roughly about 20 years, father or child, either a boy or a girl, and then leave the vault, die, which he does in Fallout 3, somehow come back from the grave with magic powers of pixie dust, then travel all the way back to Boston and lead the Institute. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever, as it clearly says in game that he was raised inside the Institute and he had never left until that point. Now let's read this next one. Sean says he never left the Institute at all. Okay, they're gonna challenge me here. And that he hates the Wasteland, but James has been known to lie, so what makes you think he's going to lie again? James, as evidence shown in Fallout 3, he's only ever lied when it was directly trying to protect someone. So for him to lie to apparently his own father, it wouldn't make any sense because there's nothing to protect him from. He's not protecting him from dangers. He lied to you as a child. But as far as we know, he has never lied about anything that puts anybody at risk. That's just not his character. And just to argue, the characters between James and Sean are extremely different. James believes in using good and noble methods to somehow further the good of the Wasteland, while Father believes that he can blow up building after building, genocide after genocide. As long as the ends justify the means, it is completely okay. Those are two completely different ideologies, and to claim that they belong to the same person is kind of sort of a far-fetched theory. I guess you can argue that it was character development, but there's never any evidence to show that James becomes Sean or vice versa. So let's get on to the next point. We know 10 years has passed since Fallout 3 and Fallout 4. We never exactly know what happens to the Lone Wanderer in the original Fallout 3. He dies, and obviously if your son dies somewhere, you're gonna hate that place. So it could be the reason why he hates the Wasteland. James actually doesn't hate the Wasteland. If you actually listen to what he says, he actually is rather impressed. He actually thinks the fact that even total nuclear annihilation can destroy the human race, he's actually kind of happy about it. He actually thinks that there's still hope for it. And the fact that the Lone Wanderer dies, this is actually highly disputed, and there's no evidence to prove either he dies or he doesn't. There's actually no evidence to prove that the Lone Wanderer is even a boy or a girl. As Moira Brown states, she says that a lot of people have tales of the Lone Wanderer, but then again, nobody can actually remember if it was a boy or a girl, because Bethesda likes to make it so you have a choice. So I guess I can get what this person's trying to say, but it doesn't really make much sense. Actually, none of this theory really does. So the last point they have here is James dies in Fallout 3, and Oki, I'm going to just assume that says okay. This is where the theory is put to rest. Actually, no. Remember, this is a world where ghouls and the children of Adam exist. And I understand a lot of radiation can kill someone, but what if he somehow managed to survive, and that may also be explaining why he is dying in Fallout 4. He got cancer cause of long exposure to radiation. Okay, this is probably the stupidest point to date. Ghouls are actually created from long-term exposure to radiation. Correct. But here's the problem, is James is dead. There's you don't ghoulify that quickly. That's not how that works. As far as I know, it takes a from the lore of Fallout New Vegas, it takes a decent amount of time exposed to large amounts of radiations to turn. So to state that James had turned into a ghoul pretty much instantaneously while he's inside that chamber. Now, I guess you can argue he was in that chamber for a long time, but I would have to argue that once you leave the building and come back, his body is not there. So what happened to it? Did he just walk out? No, they probably buried him. It doesn't make any sense otherwise. He also says that the children of Adam also exist, so basically anything's possible. This is a straw man argument in a lot of ways, because it's basically saying, well, yeah, well, this one group of people are in the wasteland, so it makes sense that this person could survive. Well, no, because if you actually read up on the lore of the children of Adam, they're actually created from being exposed to radiation at birth. By doing this, they actually develop within their DNA the ability to not only live in radiation but to absorb it. Sort of like a ghoul, but just without, the immortality and all your parts falling off. So this argument's very stupid, and to insinuate that James had survived all that radiation, that is probably very likely if it was worded properly, but there's no concrete evidence to prove that he survived. For two reasons. Okay, or one reason I should say. For one, from what we know of James, he left the player character mainly because he wanted to do good in the wasteland. He wanted to revive Project Purity. Now, from what we know, why would he leave his son a second time? It doesn't make any sense. Now, you could state that he's done it before, he'll do it again, but the reasons aren't nearly the same. He left the wasteland because he wanted to improve Project Purity. He wanted to go out and basically make free water for the wasteland. This is a noble goal, and to do so, in order for his son to also be safe, he had to abandon him. Project Purity was already off the ground when James died, which means he would have no logical reason to actually leave him, to abandon him a second time. In fact, he'd actually be more inclined not to do so, because the character can actually have a very negative reaction to that. He can actually tell the father that they basically need time to recover because they feel completely betrayed that you left him in the first place, which is a logical response. So with this being said, then why would James leave a second time? Everything we know about James has been shown that he's a nice character, cares about the wasteland overall as a whole. None of this really makes sense, and not to mention that Sean actually contradicts a lot of these points with just dialogue if you care enough to push the triangle button and ask questions from time to time. This theory is not so much stupid as the author itself is stupid, just as much as it's ignorant. They don't look too much up about the lore. Maybe this is their first game and they've just heard about Fallout 3. Anyone who's thoroughly played the game, I've dumped hundreds of hours into pretty much every Fallout game, and I can tell you that this theory is just complete bullshit if you just give it 10 minutes. Honestly, just give it 10 minutes with any of the characters, you'll start to develop the reasons why they do things. You'll learn that their character development is set a certain way, the way it should be. So to state that this guy would just straight up leave and run an institute, now mind you, Sean has never left the institute. He has no reason to lie to you. So this is probably the stupidest theory I've had to deal with. Yesterday I did a theory about is the lone survivor a Sith, and that was extremely stupid. But at least it had some backing, story-wise. This has no backing. If you were to just basically wiki search any of this, it would be pretty impossible to dispute. So if I'm wrong, please tell me in the comments. I highly doubt it, but I take all comments regardless. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Have a wonderful day.